Tonight, if you step outside and look up, you will see the same sky that every human being who has ever lived has looked up at. The same stars, the same darkness between them, the same feeling that something enormous and unknowable is looking back. You have felt it, that strange pull, that sense that the sky is not empty, but full of something you cannot name. You probably brushed it off, went back inside, forgot about it within minutes. Your ancestors did not forget. For them, the sky was not a backdrop. It was not decoration. It was the most important thing in the world. And what they believed about it, what they saw in it, what they built entire civilizations around, is so strange and so precise and so deeply human that by the time you reach the end of this, you will never look up at night the same way again. Here is what nobody tells you. The relationship between ancient humans and the stars did not begin with the Egyptians. It did not begin with the Greeks. It did not begin with any civilization you learned about in school. It began at least 40,000 years ago, possibly much earlier, long before agriculture, long before writing, long before anything we would recognize as a city or a culture or a religion. It began with people who had nothing except fire, stone tools, and a sky full of lights they could not explain, and they were paying closer attention than almost anyone alive today. Researcher Dwayne Hamaker at the University of Melbourne has spent years documenting the astronomical knowledge of Indigenous Australian peoples, whose oral traditions stretch back an estimated 65,000 years, making them the oldest continuous culture on Earth. What he found stunned the scientific community. These traditions contain accurate, detailed, multi-generational observations of stellar phenomena that Western astronomy only confirmed centuries later. The Uala'i people of New South Wales, for example, had precise knowledge of variable stars, stars that change in brightness over time, and had tracked their cycles across generations with an accuracy that required sustained, careful, systematic observation spanning hundreds, if not thousands of years. They were not guessing. They were not mythologizing randomly. They were doing science without telescopes, without mathematics, without anything except human eyes and human memory and an unbroken commitment to watching the sky. But why? What drove ancient humans to pay such obsessive attention to something so far away and so completely beyond their reach? The answer begins with the most practical thing imaginable: survival. Before agriculture, before the ability to store food across seasons, your ancestors lived or died based on their ability to predict what was coming. When would the rains arrive? When would the herds migrate? When would the plants fruit? When would the cold kill everything? And the sky, it turned out, was a calendar more reliable than anything on Earth. The stars moved in cycles so precise and so consistent that once you knew what to look for, you could use them to navigate time itself. The Pleiades, a cluster of stars visible from almost every point on Earth, rise and set in patterns so tied to seasonal change that cultures on literally every inhabited continent independently use them as an agricultural and hunting calendar. Researcher Kim Malville at the University of Colorado has documented this phenomenon across dozens of separate ancient cultures with no contact with each other. Cultures in Africa, in the Americas, in Asia, in Europe, all converging independently on the same cluster of stars as their primary seasonal marker. That is not coincidence. That is the sky being so useful and so precise that every human culture that paid attention eventually arrived at the same conclusion. But something happened along the way that was not practical at all. Something that tells you more about what it means to be human than almost any other fact in history. Your ancestors looked at the stars and they started to see people, not metaphorically, not as a quaint pre-scientific mistake. They saw with complete seriousness and total conviction that the sky was populated, that the lights above them were not random points of light, but beings, ancestors, animals, stories, warnings, promises. The Lakota people of the North American plains described the Milky Way as a road walked by the spirits of the dead. The ancient Egyptians believed the stars were the souls of their departed kings, still watching over the living from above. The Aboriginal Australians of the Western Desert saw not just the bright stars, but the dark spaces between them, the dark constellations, the shapes made by the absence of light, as animals and ancestors moving through a celestial landscape. Researcher Chloe Sherwood has documented how these dark constellation traditions required an intimate knowledge of the sky that took years to learn and a lifetime to master. Think about what this reveals. These were not people who looked up and saw chaos. They looked up and saw order. They looked up and saw family. They looked up and saw the dead still present, still watching, still part of the world of the living. The sky was not separate from human life. It was an extension of it, the biggest extension attention imaginable. And then they did something that should have been impossible. They built things, not small things, not accidental things, deliberately, precisely. At enormous cost of time and labor and social coordination, ancient peoples around the world oriented their most sacred structures to align with specific stars or star events. Göbekli Tepe in modern Turkey, currently the oldest known temple complex on Earth at approximately 12,000 years old, contains stone pillars positioned to align with the rising of the star Deneb and the circumpolar rotation of the northern sky. Researcher Giulio Magli at the Politecnico di Milano has published extensive analysis of these alignments and argued that the builders of Göbekli Tepe were not simply constructing a shelter. They were building a relationship with the sky, literally encoding their astronomical beliefs into stone, so precisely that the alignments have survived 12,000 years of geological and climatic change. The Egyptian pyramids at Giza align their shafts to Orion's belt and to the star Thuban, which was the North Star at the time of their construction, not the star Polaris we use today, because the Earth's axis wobbles over thousands of years in a cycle called precession. And the Egyptians knew this. They built their monuments to a sky that was already 4,000 years old when they built them, aligning to a historical sky, a sky of their own deep past. Researcher Robert Boval spent decades documenting these alignments, and the level of astronomical knowledge they require is, by any honest measure, extraordinary. But here is the thing about all of this that nobody talks about, the thing that reaches across 40,000 years and lands directly in your chest. Every single one of these beliefs, these observations, these monuments, these stories told about the sky, every single one of them came from the same place, from the feeling you have had, the one you had the last time you looked up on a clear night and felt, just for a moment, that the universe was not indifferent, that it was watching, that it meant something, that you were not alone inside it. Ancient humans did not have telescopes, they did not have physics, they did not have any of the tools we use to explain the sky today, but they had that feeling, and they took it seriously in a way that most people today almost never do. They built temples to it. They passed stories about it across hundreds of generations without losing a single star. They died knowing exactly where they were going, pointing upward at the lights they had watched their entire lives and saying, "There, that is where the dead live now. That is where we came from. That is where we will return." You have inherited their sky. Every star they named, every pattern they traced, every story they told about the darkness between the lights, all of it is still up there. The Pleiades are still rising and setting in the same cycles they tracked for 60,000 years. Orion is still walking across the winter sky, exactly where the Egyptians watched him walk. The Milky Way is still the road that the Lakota said the dead travel. Tonight, when you step outside and look up, you will see what they saw. The same stars, the same darkness, the same feeling that something enormous is looking back. The difference between you and them is not intelligence. It is not sophistication. It is simply that they never once looked away.